When you picture a successful project, you probably think about the end result, right? The ribbon cutting on a new building, or the launch day for a new product. But what if I told you that for most projects, success isn't actually decided on the job site? Nope, it's pretty much locked in before you even begin, right in the planning phase. And it all comes down to how you calculate the cost.
I mean, it's the classic project management nightmare, isn't it? It's the question that keeps people up at night. We've all seen it happen. A project kicks off, everyone's excited, the budget looks solid, and then, somehow, it just goes completely off the rails, burning through cash and blowing past deadlines. But what if the problem isn't some random surprise that happens halfway through? What if the failure was actually baked in from the very beginning?
That's exactly it. More often than not, the real reason for failure is a weak or flawed costing process. But here's the good news, this is totally preventable. We're going to walk through 5 principles that, together, form a kind of unbreakable chain. A system designed to make sure your project is set up to win from the moment you start.
Okay, so first things first. Before you do anything else, you absolutely need a blueprint. And I don't just mean a rough idea. I'm talking about the non-negotiable architectural plan for the entire project. This is where you draw the lines and define the boundaries of what you're about to do. It really boils down to answering 3 fundamental questions. First, what are we actually trying to do here? That's your objective. Second, what's the full scope of work we need to do to get there? And third, and this is a big one, what are the hard financial limits? How much money do we actually have to spend? These 3 things, the goal, the work, and the money, create a rigid box that you have to operate inside.
And the reason that box is so incredibly important is pretty simple. If you get this first step wrong, if you start costing things that are outside the scope or beyond the budget, the project is basically broken before it's even started. You're guaranteeing you'll have to do rework, you're going to lose money, and you're going to have some very unhappy clients or stakeholders.
All right, once that blueprint is locked in, we can move to the next link in the chain. It's time to build your parts list. Think of it like a shopping list for the entire project. Your job here is to identify every single resource you're going to need to bring this thing to life.
And when I say every resource, I mean every resource. You've got to be exhaustive here. We're talking about all the materials, any equipment you need to buy or rent, all the labor hours from your team, any outside services you'll have to pay for, plus all your contractors and consultants. You have to think through every category because if you don't, you're setting yourself up for some nasty surprises.
And make no mistake, it only takes one forgotten item to sink the entire ship. It's easy to remember the big stuff, but what about the smaller, hidden costs, like travel fees for a contractor or a specialist consultant's retainer? Missing just one thing creates an underestimate, and that underestimate will absolutely blow your budget to pieces later on. Okay, so you've got your blueprint and your complete parts list. Now it's time for the math. But this isn't just about adding up a few prices. This is about transforming that list into a detailed, defensible cost plan that reflects the true financial reality of your project. Now here's a really crucial distinction you have to make. It's not enough to just know the final total cost. You have to break it down. First, you figure out the unit cost, so the price for a single widget or for 1 hour of an expert's time. Then, you multiply that by the total quantity you need. This 2-part calculation is the absolute key to being able to review, adjust, and actually control your costs.
And all of this calculation work leads to the ultimate goal, which is achieving what we call value for money. Now, this isn't about being cheap or just picking the lowest price. It's about making sure that the total costs you've calculated are perfectly aligned with the project's goals and financial limits we set back in step 1. It's this assessment that turns a simple price list into a real strategic financial plan.
And that's why this level of detail is a complete non-negotiable. Think about it. If you just show up to a meeting with one big final number, how can anyone properly review it? How can you make smart adjustments if things change? And how on earth can you defend it if someone questions it? The answer is, you can't. Without those itemized unit costs, your budget is really just a guess.
All right, so far, everything we've talked about has been focused inside the project. But now, we have to look outward. Every single project operates in a world that has rules, a whole rulebook you simply cannot ignore. And these external laws and policies can have a massive impact on your costs.
And these rules come from everywhere. You've got government legislation, your own company's internal policies, and all sorts of industry-specific regulations. These things can dictate exactly what kind of materials you're allowed to use, what type of contractors you have to hire, or even the specific work methods you have to follow. And trust me, every single one of those rules comes with a price tag. So, the bottom line here is that trying to ignore the rulebook is not an option. It doesn't just put you at risk for fines or legal trouble later on, it actually makes your budget fundamentally invalid from the very beginning. A budget that isn't compliant is, for all intents and purposes, a useless budget that's going to have to be completely torn up and redone.
Okay, we've made it to the final principle, the last link in our chain. You've done the hard work, you've laid the foundation, you've done the research, you've run the numbers. Now it's time to package it all up into a professional document that is designed for one single purpose, getting that green light from management.
This is really the final administrative lap that brings everything together. You pull all those resource costs into one place, you calculate that final total project cost, you document everything in a clear, coherent summary, and then you submit it for approval. The goal here is pure clarity and professionalism. You're not just handing over numbers, you're making a bulletproof case for your project's financial viability.
And you can never, ever forget how important this final document is. This isn't just a piece of paperwork to be filed away. This is the one and only tool that management is going to use to decide the fate of your project. The quality and the clarity of this summary will directly determine whether your project gets approved, whether it gets sent back for painful adjustments, or whether it gets rejected outright.
So there you have it, the 5 principles. But the most important thing to understand is that this is not a checklist where you can pick and choose. It is an unbreakable chain. Each step relies completely on the one that came before it. If you mess up step 1, all the work you do in steps 2, 3, 4, and 5 is basically worthless.
So really, it all comes down to one simple but I think pretty powerful question. When the success of your entire project is on the line, we're talking your budget, your timeline, your reputation, which one of these essential foundational steps are you really willing to skip? I think you know the answer. None of them.